Hi guys! Today what we're going to look at is tackling the IOC. And this is a brief guide for how to annotate and overall prepare for the individual commentary. And I will be providing a modified commentary as an example. To begin, we're going to just give you a general overview of your IOC. The very first thing you want to do is introduce yourself and the title of the text that you'll be commenting on. Then you're going to transition over into what we call the flyover. And the flyover is where you give us the background of what happened before your selection, during your selection, and after your selection. So you're going to be given a selection from a book, and it's just going to be one little portion of it. And you want to make sure that you give us the background of the entire novel of what you are going to be talking about. Okay, so what happened before, during, and after your selection. After you give us your flyover, what we want you to do is use a transitional phrase. And this is so that we know which technique or the technique that the author used that you're going to be commenting on. Okay, so you're going to go through either the guiding questions or the tactics. You're going to identify which of those you can comment the most on, or which one, more than one, that you can comment on. And that's where you're going to introduce it. Okay, and the transitional phrase that I've provided there is, the author uses blank. I would say tone, for example. The author uses tone effectively in order to convey the idea of whatever the idea of your selection is, okay? And then you're going to give us your actual commentary. And when you do your commentary, you want to make sure that you're stating the line number that you're looking at, what those lines mean, and why they are important to that selection, that particular selection you were given. So when you are handed a passage at random, you will have 20 minutes to annotate your selected passage. The very first thing you should do is look at the guiding questions. Those guiding questions have been selected for a reason, and that is because there's guaranteed text evidence in that selection that you have that will back up whatever it is that the guiding question is asking. So if it's asking you about characterization, chances are there's solid text evidence in that piece that has evidence that will support any idea with characterization. If there's a guiding question about conflict, it's probably a section with conflict. Same thing with figurative language. There's probably multiple examples of figurative language that you can use. So don't ignore the guiding questions. You don't necessarily have to talk about them, but they are guaranteed in that passage. If you really don't want to use the guiding questions, that's totally fine. Your teachers have come up with the acronym tactics to help you further annotate your passage. And that's where you're going to look at theme, the author's technique, the characterization, tone and mood, imagery and figurative language, conflict and symbolism. It is important to note you're not talking about all of those in your commentary because that would be way too much. But these give you something that you can look for so that you can meet the time requirement. So if you're at 4 minutes and you're like, oh geez, I need something else to talk about, go back through your annotations and see if you can add more in these areas, okay? The following slide, I'm going to show you what annotating actually looks like. And I hope that my pens work, so bear with me. So I've chosen a passage that you've already looked at called I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings, okay? And what I'm going to do is I've already read this through a few times. So when you get your passage, you don't want to read it just once. You want to read it through a few times and ask yourself, okay, what am I going to look for, or what stands out to me? So I read the first paragraph and I see that there's dialogue right here, okay? And I go through the second paragraph and I see a line that says, he allowed me to live to see the day. And one of the guiding questions in this one was about tone. So I'm looking at, this is definitely a tone. He is referring to God. So I'm going to put down over here, the tone contributes to the characters, okay? And I just know that that's probably important. I also scroll down a little bit more as I'm reading. This line here would suggest that this is also tone because she's saying that she won something, won a reprieve, won that second chance. Okay, God gave her this chance to do this. I'm also scrolling down and I'm keeping in mind the ending of this passage, and I see this whole section here. And I'm like, it's not necessarily about tone, but it definitely is characterization. And I think it is important, so I want to make sure I write that down. It's referencing Edgar Allan Poe, and I just think that it's an interesting exchange between the brother and our speaker, Maya Angelou. Last but not least, I'm seeing some more down here. Finish my plate. It was a dream of a day, okay? This is a really interesting tone as well because it's all of these are describing how great the day is and how excited our speaker is to be having her graduation, okay? So what I see here, hold on one second. Okay, so what I see here is ultimately my annotations. I have my tones, I have my word choices, and the lines that I think stand out in terms of the guiding question and tactics. Okay, so this is ultimately what it looks like. And again, this is just a sample. So then I go through my planner, and this is blank normally when I get this. And your job then is to write bulleted notes. And I wanted to just show you what mine looks like. So obviously I have introduce yourself, I said my name, I said the title, and then I went through the flyover and I laid out beginning, middle, and end. Okay, and I'm talking about the whole selection, not just I'm talking about the whole passage, not just my selected part. Okay, so in the beginning, she's talking about what a wonderful day it is. She's happy, excited. And again, this is bulleted points. The middle of the passage, this is where she transitions to dread. She's talking about going to the school and, there's a loss of excitement. They begin the ceremony. Two white men show up and they're talking about how great it is. And then ultimately at the end of the passage is when her classmate delivers his valedictorian speech and offers the Negro anthem. And at that point, she again shifts and she feels proud and defiant. Okay, so when I'm providing my commentary, when I'm providing my flyover, I want to make sure that I'm talking about the whole passage, not just my selected piece. In the transitional phrase, it says choose one, and I've circled that in red because you're not saying three different transitional phrases, okay? I just filled them out in red so that you could see what the other ones would look like, but I'm going to choose the one that's in green. So the author uses tone effectively in the passage to convey how Maya Angelou feels during her graduation, okay? And then this is where my commentary happens. And this is where I take my annotated piece and I kind of lay out my line numbers. What do they mean? What is it? Why is it important? And again, you're going to notice that I didn't write this out as a script. You cannot write down verbatim what you were going to say. It has to be bulleted points, and it has to give you enough information that you can remember what you want to say during your commentary, but not be too much where you're violating the regulations, I guess, of IB commentaries. All right, so now we're going to give you the sample commentary. When I go and sit down with my teacher, I'm going to have my original annotations and I'm going to have my planner in front of me. And I want to make sure that I have both of them there so that I can reference the materials that I've prepared for myself so that I can give the best commentary possible. So here's my sample commentary. Hi, my name is Mrs. Pizzo, and I will be discussing the passage, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. In the beginning of this passage, the speaker, who is Maya Angelou, is talking about the morning on the day of her graduation. She's extremely excited. She shares a lot of exchanges between her mother, her brother, and the rest of her family. And the overall feeling she gives is happiness and exuberance. In the middle of the passage, it starts to transition. They're walking toward the school for the graduation ceremony. And the mood changes a little bit, and there's this loss of excitement and this feeling of dread. During the graduation, which is at an all-black school, she has two white men arrive after their principal gives a speech, and these men start talking about how great the white school is and all these great things that the white kids have that these children do not have. And this is where Maya Angelou starts to feel angry. She's thinking about all the things that she could do with her life if she wasn't being held back by these white men and the idea of her skin color. She remains angry until the very end, and her classmate, the student who received valedictorian honors, had to give a speech. And at first he's talking about just, all the great things that they've done and can accomplish. And she's still angry at that point. But then he turns around and he starts sang the Negro national anthem. And at that point, she starts really listening to the words, and she all of a sudden becomes proud and very defiant. Okay, so it ends with those feelings there. The author uses tone and word choice in this passage effectively to convey how Maya Angelou actually feels during this graduation. To begin, we're going to start with the very beginning with lines 6 and 7. It says, "The day had none of the insistence maturity would bring. It would bring in the few hours." I chose this line because the tone was the word choice, I guess, with insistence maturity. It connects later on to the passage because at the end of the passage, Maya Angelou does grow up. And it's not this like thing where she ages insanely, but her maturity level increases. And I thought that at the beginning of this passage, for her to talk about the insistence maturity that it would bring in a few hours, I thought that was really poignant because she does mature toward the end. And I thought that that word choice to offer that at the beginning was purposeful. In lines 11 and in lines 14 and 15, she's talking about God. And it says, "He allowed me to live to see this day. And then out of God's merciful bosom, I won a reprieve." And if I take those lines out of context, I think about how she feels at the end of this piece. And it's important because had she not seen this day, okay, had she not had the chance or this opportunity to experience what she experienced on her graduation, she wouldn't have had the mindset to overcome what she did in terms of discrimination and race. The fact that she chose the words very carefully, "God allowed me to live to see this day," and his merciful bosom, she won this like second chance. She really chose those words because she was excited at the beginning, but it then foreshadows what happened later with the fact that she is happy that she lived to see this day because it changed her whole outlook on everything. In lines 21 through 25, I thought this was an interesting line in terms of word choice, or I guess purposeful, what she wanted to point out in terms of characterization and what it reveals. Okay, so at the end of the story, she's talking about how all of these intelligent African American children are going to have to work extra, extra hard in order to achieve anything. And she brings up the idea at the very beginning of her brother handing her this collection of Edgar Allan Poe poems, which, they jokingly call EAP. And they turn to Annabelle Lee. And this is a graduation from elementary school. So the fact that she's turning to an Edgar Allan Poe poem and offering, and reciting these lines with her brother at the very beginning of the passage shows how intelligent she is. So that when you read further on in the passage, when she realizes she doesn't have the same opportunities because of her skin color, it's very telling. And I think it was purposeful here. And then lastly, she gives the idea of it was a dream of a day. And this is contradictory in 2 points. She was very excited about this day, and that whole beginning is talking about how amazing she was feeling and how excited she was to be graduating. And then it contrasts at the end where she, has this reality check. But without this day, she wouldn't be who she is today. So in a way, it was a dream of the day. A dream of a day. And these lines are important to the overall passage. So that concludes my commentary. While you were listening, we hope that you noticed a few things. The first thing we hoped you noticed was that my flyover was brief and provided the context of the entire passage, not just my selection. My selection focused solely on the first part of the entire passage, but I made sure that I gave the context for the beginning, middle, and the end. I also hope that you notice that I transitioned from my flyover to my commentary by stating which part of tactics I was actually focusing on and what the idea of the passage was. Did you notice how I said the line numbers numerous times? I stated what the lines meant, and I explained why they were important. We know that IOCs can be stressful, but if you follow these simple steps, they don't have to be. Happy commentating, everybody, and good luck.